those of you that have been having trouble with hearing my videos, this should work best for you. It turns out there's a problem with my phone microphone, and I didn't figure it out until I had finished a video recording of a YouTube video, and then did all the what I needed to do, and there was no sound. So here I am. I'm going to replace it with a podcast sort of type style episode. All right. What I want to talk about is yesterday's hearing, specifically about the fact that it was determined that Bryan Kohberger did not stalk the victims of the Idaho 4 murders. A lot of people are taking a victory lap with this one because they think if there was no stalking, then there was no connection, then there was no murder, or there was no motive. Motive can be very personal to the person committing the act. They don't need to have a personal connection. Now, that said, there are a couple of things I want to throw out there as just things to ruminate on because of this statement, because I think a lot of people might be interpreting this in a way that it's not intended. First of all, when they say that there was no proof of stalking, are they going by the legal definition of stalking, which is persistent and unwanted harassment or surveillance? And that typically means in person. These laws really haven't caught up to cyber stalking or to the internet, specifically social media. So does it mean that they have determined that there was absolutely no social media connection between him and the victims? Okay. And now I've always said, because he was so tech savvy and he had that interest in tech forensics, he was going to know what to do in order to not leave a trail, not leave a trace. So would it be possible for him to maybe use a different device or use a burner and then maybe get rid of it the next day? I don't know. I don't even know if that's possible. But I'm wondering how they can say definitively that there was no stalking. And it's because, as I've said, I've always believed the house was the target and not the people inside. So it's very difficult for me to believe that there wasn't some form of surveillance going on in order for somebody to get in and out of that house with the efficiency that they did without leaving a trail. Now, I don't think he necessarily had to be in the house. We've gone through this. We've looked at the floor plan. You walk straight through the kitchen to the entryway and the stairs to the third floor right in front of you. You don't have to. He didn't have to have been there before. And when he came down the stairs again, the light from Xana's bedroom, something would have illuminated. There would have been noise. He would have followed it. He didn't need a map. He didn't need to have been in there before. However, when a killer is choosing its victim, number one, the stalking is typically part of it, right? It's the hunt, especially with predatory stalkers. There are different types. There's the incompetent stalker, and there's, who is just socially awkward. Then there's the predatory stalker who is stalking someone with the intent of hurting them. So I don't see how he couldn't have had some prior knowledge to that house. And, when they're choosing their motive and they're choosing their victim, one of the things they have to consider is vulnerability. And what made that house so vulnerable was that sliding door. That was something he would have to have known about. Now, granted, could he have just driven around the house and then drove up to the house and rolled up? Maybe. But not only did he have to know about the sliding door, he would have to know about who lived there, what was their activity. He chose a very specific time And I think he chose that time because he knew that's when this house is typically quiet. So I'm having a hard time here. And it's also important to remember he could leave his phone at home. Remember that line in the 4chan post? They left the phone on YouTube autoplay so that there would be no pings. He could have left his phone home. He could have left his car home. He's a runner. How do we know he didn't run there? We don't. That's why I'm not comfortable saying, okay, yeah, there was no stalking. I've never thought that there was just one person that he was stalking. I've always felt it was the house, and then he just maybe got obsessed with one person in it. But let's say somebody didn't lead him there, meaning like maybe let's say he didn't run into somebody at a restaurant like the Mad Greek. How did he know that that house was full of women? How did he know that there weren't men in that house? Because I don't believe for a second if he knew there were men in that house that he would have gone in. There had to have been some kind of surveillance. And so is it that there's no stalking of the victims or that there's no stalking of the house? I've said before, I don't think this was a case of unrequited love. I don't think this was a case of being fixated on just one of them. I don't. Just one? You go into a house with that many cars to kill one person, to hurt one person, and you think you're going to get in and out? No. That's somebody to commit that crime that they committed and leave 2 survivors with 4 victims with all those cars. That's somebody who went into that house to kill who was ever inside of it. That is my opinion on that. Okay, now let's move on to another topic, but it's related to the case. This morning, I became aware of the forthcoming release of Howard Blum's book about the Idaho murders. And you can look at my Substack post or in my community section. I'll post it there. And it's a very haunting cover art. It's a white, what looks like an Alanta, driving down a road, dead at night, the only car on the road. And it's incredibly eerie and as well as effective. It really does. It gave me a chill when I saw it. But I've spoken about my concerns about Howard Blum and specifically about his integrity. And I first brought that up a few months ago when that article regarding that was based on all of those text messages with Brett Norton. And I brought up the part where he was doing a podcast interview and he said that according to his source, Dylan, he didn't say Dylan, but he said a roommate, they were texting during the murders and that at one point one of them said, "Oh my gosh, I think someone's being killed." I'm going to play that for you now.
Father has found there has been evidence presented to the grand jury that says that these 2 roommates during the course of this murder were texting to one another and that at one point they even sent a text saying, "Oh my gosh, I think someone's being killed."
Now that these messages have been leaked, I have a little bit more flexibility in what I can say. That's not what these messages said. And again, I will post the message in my community section. What the message from Steve actually said was, no, they said she heard everything and even admitted saying via text, "I think someone killed them. She just didn't call and report it even as she was hiding." Here's the problem I have with that. It very easily could have been sent. That text could have been sent the morning after the bodies were discovered. I'm uncomfortable with how this is being framed, but I'm more uncomfortable that Howard Blum took that line and it morphed into, "Oh my gosh, I think someone's being killed." Because the implication there is Dylan knew what was going on, was somehow complicit, and didn't call 911. And that's a very dangerous accusation to make. And I don't know if Blum just misspoke. I don't know if I don't know. And I'm especially confused because when Brett Norton was being interviewed by Melissa Jade, she said this regarding the messages and how she gave the information to Howard Blum.
Of not wanting information getting back to Bloom, right?
Yes.
And you had said that you weren't working with him anymore.
I
So
wasn't.
At what point did you feel, because you eventually did start working with him again, was that hard?
It's not like a working relationship. It's not like that, but I don't really feel the need to explain that to a bunch of strangers hating on me in your chat. I had randomly talked to Howard way later after the fact, and I had verbally said to him, well, listen, there's some stuff about a grand jury, and Dylan texting saying, I think someone unalived them. That's all I said.
Okay. So she's saying that she didn't give him the messages, that she only verbally told him what was in the article, what was in the messages. So we all know this is bullshit, right? This is a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist. This isn't going to fly. However, could this have happened, and could that have caused Howard Blum to make a mistake when saying what he said? Did Brat just read them to him? Did she just tell him? Did he embellish based on, how it was framed? Did he have the text messages, and did he embellish based on the wording in the message? Or was he intentionally fed the wrong information? Because something about this, it's not working for me. I don't know where the information came from. I don't know how he got that line, or I don't know if it was a mistake. I don't know what it is. But it makes me side-eye Howard Blum and everything he writes. Because that's a big thing to mess up. Saying, oh my gosh, I think someone's being killed, after the groundswell of harassment that these roommates have dealt with. That's a loaded accusation. And I can't believe, and it's probably because nobody listened to that podcast. I did, because that's just how I am. But I can't believe more hasn't been made of it. I just don't see an author with this kind of, who is as esteemed as Howard Blum is. I can't believe that he would just take messages, like take the word of someone on the internet. And what also concerns me is, how come did he ever go to Steve and say, hey, I have these messages. Did you exchange these messages with this person? Like, what happened there? What sort of due diligence was done regarding these messages? I don't know. And like I've said, Brat insists that Steve was giving other creators the exact same information word for word. And she said, if you look at the date of when Steve told me about the roommates texting, well, JLR said something the next day. It wasn't the next day. It was 20 minutes later. So something funky's going on. And I feel like information is being released to support a very specific narrative, and that narrative is that Dylan is involved with these murders. And if you read those messages, you saw how Brat had a real, almost contempt for Dylan. So I don't know what's going on here. I just hope that if Howard Blum mentions this in his book, there's still time for him to edit, to correct it. Because once this book comes out, if information like that is in this book, these roommates it's just gonna reopen a wound, and it's just gonna start all over again for them. Not that it's ever died down for Dylan. So that's my feeling. All right. your homework. Do you think that there was some stalking involved with this case, the house or the victims? Do you think that he did stalk them, but they just haven't been able to find any trail of it? And will you buy Howard Blum's book? I guess that's the question. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And I'm getting a new phone. I'm supposed to be getting it in by tomorrow, so hopefully I can return to videos. But I think hopefully this worked for a lot of you since you've been having some issues with the sound. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.